I knew something was off the second Diane from PR asked me to pop into the back room for a sec. Nobody at HQ pops into anything unless they're about to get blindsided. The back room was just the old supply closet, cleaned out and staged like a makeshift HR corner. Two plastic chairs, a folding table, and a sad little box of tissues in the middle, like this was supposed to be emotional. Diane sat down, smoothed her skirt, and pulled out a folder like she was about to sell me a timeshare. 12 years, huh? She said, not even looking me in the eye. I didn't answer. I'd barely sat down when she launched into her monologue. We've been evaluating how our growth strategy aligns with long-term operational efficiency, she said, voice flat, robotic. And as part of that shift, we're consolidating several roles in the logistics and compliance space. I waited. I knew the punch was coming. She blinked, took a breath, and said it. Today will be your last day. Quick note, before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. That was it. No mention of the protocols I built from scratch. No acknowledgement of the sponsor paperwork I'd cleaned up after they nearly tanked a season. Just corporate boilerplate dressed up to sound like vision. I looked past her, toward the hallway, where I could see someone had already packed a duffel bag with my name on it. My name, sharpied right across the top like I was a kid getting kicked out of summer camp. Inside, a branded neck pillow I'd forgotten I even owned, my final check in a sealed envelope, and a glossy pamphlet titled Thriving Through Transition. I stood up. That it? Diane gave a tight smile. We appreciate your contributions. I didn't say anything, just grabbed the bag and walked out, my boots echoing against the linoleum like gunshots. In the hallway, I passed Landon, our shiny new innovation lead, fresh out of some consulting firm that thinks racing is just a marketing vertical. He gave me this smirky wink like we were in on some private joke. I kept walking. Didn't matter that I'd spent the last 6 months warning them about supplier violations, or that I'd built a compliance system held together with duct tape and caffeine because no one else would. They'd made their choice. Out in the parking lot, I dropped the bag into the passenger seat and popped open the glove box. Tucked inside was that old rule book, folded in half, with my handwritten notes flagging the exact violations they ignored. I didn't go home. I drove straight to the State Racing Commission's open forum. I parked across from the commission building and just sat there, engine idling, hand on the glove box. I didn't need to open it yet. I already knew what was inside. That folded rulebook, the flag doc, the real reason I was sitting in my car with a final check and a neck pillow instead of clocking into work like I had for 12 damn years. 6 months earlier, I saw it. Clear as day. 3 of our teams, all under the league's umbrella, were sourcing performance-critical parts through an unregistered third party. The suppliers weren't in the disclosure forms. Hell, they didn't even show up in the vendor registry. But I caught them through the shipping logs. Same part codes, different sender addresses, rerouted invoices. I flagged it and wrote up a compliance alert like I always did. Annotated it top to bottom. Legal definitions, rulebook excerpts, screenshots from the manifests. Red ink everywhere. I made it idiot-proof. Then I sent it straight to Declan. He replied 12 minutes later. Not a biggie. Just focus on getting trucks ready for Daytona. That was it. A 6-page breakdown of a major rule violation, and he tossed it like junk mail. This was the same guy who once wrote off a $3,200 steakhouse tab as track tech expenses. The guy who thought DOT transport regs were just guidelines. If you slapped enough sponsor decals on the trailer. I knew better than to argue over email, so I walked it down to his office. He didn't even look up from his phone. We don't need another internal panic over sourcing. You want us on the front page of Race Week for supplier drama? I held the paper out. If this gets caught in a teardown post-race, it's going to be worse than a headline. He waved it off. It's not our job to babysit team vendors. You think NASCAR cares who tightens the bolts if the car passes inspection? I walked out without saying a word. He didn't want to hear it. None of them did. So I did what I had to do. I filed it anyway, made a copy for myself, labeled it vendor flag, urgent, and slid it into a folder in my drawer under the giveaway t-shirts and leftover media badges. Then I backed it up to my USB just in case. After that, I kept my head down. Trucks got packed, inspections passed, no one cared. The doc sat there, forgotten. But I didn't forget. I started watching. Every time those 3 teams raced, I tracked their breakdown sheets, lap times, post-race adjustments, the parts they swapped mid-series. I started seeing patterns, like clockwork. Those mystery suppliers? They weren't just budget fillers. They were shaving seconds off laps in a league where half a second could buy you a season. I tried to raise it again a month later. Got shut down again, this time by Carla in legal. Her exact words? Without a formal protest or a documented failure, there's no basis for escalation. You'd be putting us in a liability position. Translation: keep your mouth shut or we all go down. So I did, for a while, but that folder never left my drawer. And when Diane walked me into that back room and handed me my life in a duffel bag, I didn't even look at the check. I just made sure that folder was zipped in with everything else, because they can bury a warning inside a pile of merch. They can call it irrelevant, overblown, inconvenient. But the commission, they don't need to move fast. They just need it written down. I didn't walk straight out the day they fired me. I drove back, pulled into the employee lot one last time. I still had a desk upstairs, and if they were going to wipe my name off the system by 5 o'clock, I was at least going to choose what went with me. Nobody stopped me. I walked past the front desk. Anita glanced up, froze, then looked back at her screen like I wasn't even there. Upstairs, same story. Half the crew stared into their monitors. The rest had their heads ducked like we were in a damn funeral procession, and I was the body. Not a word. Not even from Josh, who I covered for 2 weeks ago when that sponsor audit nearly blew up. He'd mislabeled shipping invoices for the team truck fleet. Wrong year, wrong categories, wrong sponsor coverage. I fixed everyone by midnight and logged it under my own credentials so he wouldn't take the heat. Now he wouldn't even look up from his Excel sheet. I opened my cabinet and started boxing. No photos, no plants, just binders, docs, drives. I kept things clean. You work in compliance long enough, you learn to never leave fingerprints. Pulled the flagged vendor report first. Still stapled, still sharp with red ink. Underneath it, the backup USB. Slipped that into my pocket. One last binder of old reports, mostly internal QA audits nobody ever read. I tossed that in too. I didn't take them because I was pissed. I took them because I was finally free, and that makes me dangerous. The box was light, 12 years, boiled down to one archive box and a memory stick. I slid the drawer shut and gave it one last knock with my knuckle. Habit. Then I walked out. No one said goodbye. No one even stood up. As I hit the stairwell, I heard someone cough and say, "Guess we're not doing cake." And a few chuckles followed behind me. That was it. That was the send-off. Out in the parking garage, I tossed the box in the trunk and got into my car. The air was stale and hot, windows shut, sun baking through the glass. But I didn't roll them down. I sat there, sweat beading on my neck, and reached into the passenger seat for the commission's agenda. 8 pages, public document, stamped for the upcoming open forum. I flipped to the back, to the line item that mattered. Open Q&A, part certification and enforcement pathways. I knew what that meant. I knew what question to ask. I didn't need a title, or a badge, or a desk upstairs anymore. All I needed was 5 minutes on a microphone, and a room full of people who still thought no one was watching. I showed up early, the kind of early that makes people look twice, like you might be lost or staff. I wasn't either. Just a man with a folder and a score to settle. The forum was held in one of those sad conference rooms in a Hampton by the airport. No windows, sagging chairs, ceiling tiles water-stained like a bad map. The smell was burnt coffee and decades of budget meetings. A folding table in the back had a few wrapped muffins and a jug of something labeled juice that looked like melted candy. I took a seat in the last row, far corner. The folder stayed on my lap, closed, my hand resting on it. Around me were the usual mix: compliance consultants, safety reps, local mechanics with clipboards, and one guy in a vintage windbreaker who whispered commentary under his breath the entire time. 2 rows up, I spotted a lawyer from a firm we used to contract with. She glanced at me, hesitated, then turned away like she hadn't. That was fine. I wasn't there to catch up. The panel up front was 5 people deep. 3 commissioners, 1 legal counsel, 1 PR puppet, and a too-tight sport coat. They launched right in. A slideshow, monotone voices, policy reviews, no urgency, no fire. Just the usual parade of pretend transparency. I sat through all of it. 1 hour in, a guy from a Midwest tire company asked about tread import restrictions. 30 minutes after that, someone brought up pit lane signage standards, then 15 full minutes on taillight dimensions in mixed weather events. None of it mattered. Not to me. Finally, after 2 hours, the moderator tapped the mic. "We'll now open the floor for public questions. Please line up in the center aisle, one at a time. I stood, my knees cracked. I walked down the aisle slow, steady. No one else moved at first. A few turned to watch me. Probably assumed I was going to ask about signage or pit specs or some other forgettable detail. I reached the mic, adjusted it. The panel looked up. The commissioner in the middle gave a nod. I didn't clear my throat, didn't stall, just asked, how does the commission classify vehicles that use third-party part suppliers not listed in disclosure forms, especially when those parts directly impact performance outcomes? The whole room froze. The commissioner blinked. Legal counsel leaned forward. The PR guy shifted in his seat. I held their stare. The commissioner in the middle finally spoke. Older guy, slow voice, deliberate. We're reviewing that very issue. That was it. I nodded once, stepped back, and returned to my seat. No one clapped. The guy in the windbreaker looked over at me with one raised eyebrow. That was the closest thing to applause I was going to get. But I didn't care. That question, it was a match dropped in a dry forest. And I'd written the whole damn fuel map months ago. The rest of the forum dragged on. A few more questions, a few confused glances, but the mood had shifted. You could feel it in the air, stiff, unsettled, like someone had farted in church, but no one wanted to say who. When it ended, the room emptied fast. People avoided eye contact. Some whispered. I saw the PR guy talking to someone on his cell before he even left the stage. Two commissioners huddled near the back exit, whispering like kids caught doing something wrong. I walked out with my folder under one arm. Outside, the sun had started to set over the parking lot. Planes roared overhead. My car was the only one with racing decals still stuck to the back window. I got in, shut the door, and just sat. No fanfare. No takedown speech. No dramatic reveal. Just one question, spoken calm, clean, and public. That's how you start a landslide. 3 days later, I was sitting on my porch with a cup of bad coffee and a stiff breeze cutting through the morning haze when my phone lit up. Becca, 6:47 a.m. Hey, did you ask that question at the forum? No greeting, no emojis, just tension packed into 7 words. I didn't reply, didn't need to. The commission's minutes had gone live the night before. PDF format, publicly indexed. You could search for any word, phrase, timestamp. Right there on page 11, under public questions, was mine. Almost word for word. How does the commission classify vehicles that use third-party part suppliers not listed in disclosure forms, especially when those parts directly impact performance outcomes? No name attached, but anyone who worked in our league knew exactly where that line came from. I'd said it in 3 internal emails, 2 meeting notes, and a compliance alert no one bothered to read. Until now, I took a sip of coffee and waited. 8 minutes later, the next ping came in. Sys notify, your inbox, sharpj@motoleague.org, has been accessed by user d.brennan@motoleague.org. Message flagged, part sourcing risks, urgent. They reopened it. The same flagged doc I filed 6 months back. The one Declan brushed off like a smudge on his bumper. I leaned back and watched the sky shift colors. I didn't feel excited. I didn't feel nervous. Just ready. Phone buzzed again. This time, not a system ping. Becca, 7:12 a.m. Your bomb just went off. That one hit different. She didn't mean it as a joke. Becca worked 12-hour days cleaning up everyone else's messes. She knew the cost of silence better than most. I tapped the message but didn't type anything. What was I supposed to say? Told you so. Buckle up? No point. The fuse was lit. Nothing left to do but watch the flames roll uphill. By noon, 3 more pings hit my old inbox, all automated forward notifications. Someone had added my flagged email to a group thread titled, Compliance Alert, Part Source Inquiry or Immediate Review. That thread didn't exist last week. I clicked the commission site again. Page views on the meeting transcript had tripled. Motorsport forums started asking questions. Mostly noise, speculation, people misreading between lines that weren't even public yet. But the real players knew. I wasn't a ghost anymore. I was a data point. The same people who left me boxed out and silent were now scrambling to patch holes in a hull they insisted wasn't leaking. Funny how quick their ears work when the spotlight turns. And Becca? She kept it short. Later that night, she sent one more line. FYI, they're pulling invoices. Not questions. Invoices. The kind with serial numbers, delivery dates, and mismatched vendors no one bothered to check. That was the shift. Emails you could argue, memos you could ignore. But paper trails, that's what gets people fired. By the next morning, I didn't need updates from Becca anymore. The company was leaking smoke. A buddy from facilities, Nick, the guy who used to fix the coffee machine with duct tape and bad attitude, forwarded me a screenshot. Subject, Emergency Compliance Review, Executive Only Time. 9:30 a.m., Boardroom C attendees. Declan, COO, Legal, PR, Operations Oversight caption. Underneath, guess someone finally found the fire. I could picture it already. Declan pacing behind the frosted glass, red in the face, sweating through his button-up, trying to spin the same excuses that stopped working 3 days ago. COO probably acting shocked, legal flipping through binders trying to find a word that meant oops, but in lawyer speak. They'd mocked the warning, rolled their eyes. Declan once called it nerd paranoia during a sponsor dinner. Now they were in DEFCON mode, and outside that boardroom, phones ringing, compliance crawling through old vendor logs, finance trying to figure out why the same part invoice showed up under 3 different team accounts with 3 different sourcing codes. It was unraveling fast. Around noon, a racing blog dropped a piece. Unregistered parts in competitive leagues? Questions arise after compliance inquiry. I read it twice. And there it was. Paragraph 4. Buried, but there. An internal league memo from February, reviewed by this outlet, outlined specific concerns regarding unverified third-party suppliers and the risk of uneven performance advantages. It didn't mention my name, but I knew the memo. I wrote it. 6 pages, including diagrams, vendor timelines, and a warning that if the league didn't act, it was only a matter of time before this came back with teeth. That line was quoted almost word for word. The memo was marked confidential when I sent it. Someone had leaked it. Someone inside. I didn't smile, didn't even blink. Truth is, I was already on my laptop, not to chase headlines. I wanted to check something. Back when they tried to boost morale with equity alignment, they offered long-term staff a fractional ownership stake. Tiny percentages, basically worthless, unless you were one of the execs or the CFO's nephew. They made us wait 5 years to vest. I clicked into my old HR portal, surprised they hadn't locked me out yet, and opened my comp statement. Vested. 48 hours before separation. 2 days. That meant I owned a piece of the league, a small one. But in a scandal, even crumbs get noticed. I copied the statement, saved it. They'd hoped I'd walk out clean, forgettable, that I'd disappear into LinkedIn posts and job board black holes. But now I was on every screen in that boardroom, even if my name wasn't. I shut the laptop and leaned back in the chair. Outside, my neighbor's kid revved a dirt bike in their driveway. Birds scattered. I barely heard it. Because I was doing the math in my head. The commission was sniffing, blogs were circling, vendors would start pulling records soon. No one wanted to be the last one holding the bag. And tucked in their financials, probably buried in line items they stopped checking, sat a fractional shareholder with a folder full of receipts. Me, it wasn't revenge, it was positioning. They'd spent 12 years ignoring everything I said. Now they couldn't ignore what I owned. The headlines dropped fast. Regional Race League under review after part disclosure inquiry. Supplier loophole raises fairness concerns in semi-pro racing. Did the league know? Internal documents suggest yes. I didn't need to click them. I'd already lived the story. What mattered was the shift in tone. From backroom whisper to public indictment. People were pissed, and not just the fans. Sponsors were pulling statements. Vendors were issuing disclaimers. One even paused fulfillment on custom builds, pending compliance clarification. And somewhere in the middle of that mess, my inbox lit up. Subject, interview request. Racing Pulse Weekly. We saw your question at the commission forum. I closed it. Didn't need a byline. I already said what needed saying. In a room full of people who chose not to listen until it made them sweat. Another one came in, then another. I didn't answer any of them. By Wednesday, the CEO had stepped aside, not fired, not blamed. Just taking a sabbatical to focus on family. Classic move. PR said it with soft words, like the league was suddenly a human being with feelings. Declan didn't get a sabbatical. He resigned. The internal email leaked 3 hours later. Thankful for the opportunity, proud of the growth, looking forward to new adventures. I almost laughed. He went out with bullet points like it was a vacation slideshow. He'd thrown me under the bus 6 months ago. Now he couldn't even find the wheel. That same day, someone dug up another one of my old memos. Not the flagged one, a different one, dated a year earlier, titled, "Our current sourcing model is vulnerable." I remember that one. Wrote it on a Sunday night after spending all weekend cross-checking part numbers and finding vendor inconsistencies in 3 different regions. They'd ignored it. I brought it up at Monday's ops meeting. Declan said it was alarmist, then pivoted to talking about hospitality tent upgrades. Now it was posted on Motorsport Reddit with 600 upvotes and a thread 10 pages deep. People were tearing through it like a case file. Some were defending the league, most weren't. One guy commented, "Whoever wrote this got fired, right?" Classic another replied, "Whoever wrote this just blew up a whole league." Also classic, no one said my name. Didn't need to. My language was all over it. Phrases I used, structure I followed, the way I flagged risk. Anyone who'd read my stuff before knew exactly where it came from. Even my old coworkers started acting like they'd backed me all along. One posted something vague on LinkedIn. "Proud to have worked with professionals who always put integrity first." Same guy who wouldn't even look up when I boxed my desk. That's how it always went. When things burn, everyone scrambles to pretend they brought the extinguisher. But I wasn't looking for praise. I wasn't even watching the news anymore. I just wanted the truth to get loud enough that nobody could pretend they missed it. And now, it was deafening. The buyout didn't surprise me. When a league starts bleeding reputation and sponsors in the same week, the sharks circle fast. And one of the biggest, Colston Group, swooped in before the ink on the subpoenas even dried. Press release hit Thursday morning. Colston acquires Regional Racing League. Restructuring begins immediately. "We believe in competition with integrity," said the CEO, all smiles and filler words. Translation: clean house, repaint the trucks, and slap a new logo on the fire. They'd done it before. Bought up 3 other mid-tier leagues in the past 6 years. One didn't survive the merger. One got absorbed into a feeder series. The third became a shiny development project they showcase in investor slides. The league I used to work for? That was next. Within 12 hours, the changes started. Mass layoffs, leadership transitions, silence from the social media accounts. Sponsors dropped their logos like the teams had grown mold. The old PR guy tried to tweet something about a new chapter, but comments roasted him into hiding. Meanwhile, I sat on my couch with a drink and logged into my computer portal. The fractional stake I vested in, it had doubled. Nothing flashy, just a clean, sharp bump in valuation after Colston's acquisition. They always pay a premium to clean up fast. I checked the numbers twice, ran the tax calculator, then called my guy. He didn't ask why. He just said, "How much?" "Half," I told him. I didn't want it all gone. Just enough to make it real. Enough to move quiet. We sold it through a proxy, tucked inside a bundle of mid-cap holdings. No red flags, no headlines. No one even noticed. And that's how I liked it. While everyone at HQ scrambled to rewrite their resumes and delete old emails, I was watching my account balance climb on the back of the same system they used to push me out. They wanted to forget me, wanted to pretend the foundation hadn't shifted under their feet until it cracked straight through the lobby. But here's the part they couldn't scrub. I was now part of the paperwork, listed on ownership records filed with the transfer. My name, stamped in legal print, tied to the league like a signature under a warning label. Even if they changed the name, even if they buried the scandal in quarterly statements, I'd be there, baked in. Not front and center, not on a stage. But in the fine print, they'd have to read every time someone asked where it all went wrong. I didn't need revenge, I had receipts. And now? Now I had leverage. I had one thing left to do. Pulled up the transcript from the commission forum. Scrolled to the section labeled Public Questions, line 11. My question, word for word. I printed it, on real paper. Nothing glossy, nothing bound. Just plain black and white ink, straight from the PDF. I circled my question in red Sharpie. Not neat, not careful. Just one hard stroke around the line that started the landslide. Then I grabbed a yellow sticky note, wrote 5 words. Next time, listen. No name. No return address. Just truth. Taped to a bullet. I slid the paper and note into a plain envelope. Addressed it to Declan's house. Found it through an old HR sheet I'd archived during my last week. He lived 30 minutes from HQ, tucked in some suburban cul-de-sac with a golf course nearby. Probably still had his company badge in the drawer, thinking it might come in handy again. It wouldn't. Dropped the envelope in a blue box near the gas station, right under a sticker that said, "Smile, you're on camera. Let them watch." I wasn't hiding. Then I drove home. At a stoplight, I opened the league's official site on my phone. The homepage was stripped. No headlines, no race recaps. Just a bland Colston logo and a message that read, "We're working on something new." I knew what that meant. They were scrubbing everything. Logos, rosters, news pages, sponsor listings. The old league name didn't even show up in the search bar anymore, like it had never existed. But the paper trail still lived, and so did the subpoenas. I wasn't named in the filings, but I didn't have to be. They were using my words, the structure of my memos, the language in my emails, whole sentences I'd written out of frustration, now quoted like scripture in legal documents. Material exposure to performance imbalance. Pattern of unverified sourcing practices. Negligence through willful inaction. That wasn't their voice. That was mine. And I didn't need a headline or a podium or a phone call from legal. I'd been heard. Finally. The dock creaked under me as I sat back, bare feet hanging over the water, condensation sliding down the side of the bottle in my hand. Phone buzzed on the wood beside me. Again, I let it sit. When I finally picked it up, the screen was lit with a fresh headline from a racing outlet I hadn't bothered to unfollow. Commission investigation official. Operational irregularities confirmed. No fluff. No qualifiers. Just the kind of sentence that makes accountants reach for a new spreadsheet and lawyers start blinking too fast. I scrolled through the article, just enough to confirm what I already knew. Nothing about me, no whistleblower credit, no dramatic tell-all. Didn't matter. The silence said enough. Behind the scenes, investors were pulling out. Quietly at first, then in waves. Sponsors who'd stood behind the old leadership were rewriting statements and scrubbing partnerships from their sites. One issued a refund policy for anyone who bought gear with the old league name on it. And Colston? They stopped pretending. Press release dropped that morning. New Era Motorsports is here. Same passion, stronger integrity. New name, new logo, same shell. They could gut the truck fleet and replace every team manager they wanted. Wouldn't change the fact that people had seen under the hood now. Couldn't unsee it. I drained the last sip from my drink, wiped the sweat from my palm, and set the bottle down next to the phone. The lake was dead still, sun catching just enough off the ripples to feel like the world had stopped holding its breath. I didn't feel like a hero, didn't feel like a villain either. I'd spoken one sentence, dropped one match, and gravity had done the rest.